Hey everybody, this is Mark Smith with another episode of Digital Roughnecks. Now, this is an episode I've been intending to do for a long time. I think it's a foundational one for those of us in the oil and gas business. So, a couple of years ago, I actually saw on LinkedIn Bill Gates had on his recommended book list this Vaclav Smil's How the World Really Works. And I thought, well, I want to give it a read. And I think it's a must read for anybody in the oil and gas industry. You should read this book. But I'm going to summarize it all up here for you. But I still recommend that you do read it. And the links are below, here below. Now, here's the key point, right? So you've got this chart here. And what this chart really shows you is he says, okay, you need to understand the way the world works because so few people are actually involved in the creation of things. For example, he said in the food, which is rung number 2 in the pyramid, he said, at the turn of the century, about 78% were involved in agriculture. They knew how food was made because most of them were involved in actually making the food. And now it's less than 2%, maybe 1.5% of the people who actually consume food actually know how it's made. So it was important for him to write this book to say, how is food made and how the world really works. Okay, so at the base level, energy is the foundation. So fossil fuels, which also produce electricity. Without that, none of the other stuff actually could get created. Okay? So the base level is energy. Everything else falls on that. And, we even see how energy, when it's abundant and it's relatively cheap, everything else works. And when it becomes more expensive, everything else gets more expensive. So there's a direct relation between energy and everything else. Okay, the next rung up on the pyramid is food. So the number one breakthrough that's happened in this century is the creation of synthetic fertilizer from natural gas. Okay, so we know that is ammonia nitrate. And what he said, look, for now and the foreseeable future, we cannot feed the world without relying on fossil fuels. That's from the book, How the World Really Works. And 4 billion people would not have been alive without synthetic fertilizer. So this is chart, and it's showing how the growth of the population, okay, and how it grew in direct proportion to people having food, and that grew in direct proportion to the amount of fertilizer that was synthetic fertilizer created from natural gas. The flip side is true. If some of these folks who say, hey, we should eliminate all fertilizer that's produced from fossil fuels. In fact, some of the protests that are going on with farmers that you hear in Dutch farmers who are coming in and literally dumping cow poop in the city. It's a protest against this idea that, hey, you should be able to grow all of our food without using fossil fuel created fertilizer. And they're saying that's ridiculous. You have no idea how food's actually made. And so they made a point there, okay? The next level up are these basic building block materials, cement, steel, plastics, and ammonia, okay? And again, there's other things that, might fall into that category that are all created from, you guessed it, fossil fuels and the energy produced from those. So that's another key thing right there. Without that, buildings, houses, all of the basic stuff, wouldn't be created without that. And then the fourth up category is what we call engines and chips. Now, we all know about chips because we're all use the cloud, and those are data centers, okay? And now you've got AI on a chip, which is the next wave of computing, right? You're going to hear about AI data centers. And the reason those can be created is they can only be created because you have these chips that can be created, which needs super reliable power, and data centers, which also need super reliable power, okay? And then, of course, engines and turbines. I'm not talking necessarily about, the engines that might be in a car, which is important, but I'm talking about the engines that drive industry. Okay, and turbines is one of the key things in the production of electricity, for example. So anyway, this is the fourth building block, and it kind of goes on from there. But basically, this foundational layer with energy being at the bottom is super key. And I think this is a foundational episode because when people start to poke away and say, let's eliminate fossil fuels, what they're basically saying is, I'm okay if half the people in the world would die in 6 months. Because if you eliminate fertilizer, that's exactly what would happen. Now, either A, they don't know how fertilizer is made, or they don't understand that food comes because you can, you have fertilizer and you can make food. Either they don't understand that, or they actually do understand it and they're okay. They're sort of like that movie where you snap your finger and half the people, the population of the universe are wiped out. They'd be okay with that. And trust me, there are a lot of people who would be okay if you just wiped out half the population. Either way, either ignorance or intent, you just got to be wary of people who say just eliminate fossil fuels, because even if, wind and solar and all that stuff are not going to replace the things that we're looking at right here. All right. I'm going to end it right there. I totally recommend reading the book. There's a link below to the video.